Watchmen from DC Comics is one of the supreme masterpieces of the comic book form. Recently, I took a look at 4 of the most common formats available to readers looking to seek out this series and attempted to explain how each serves as an upgrade from the previous version. Here we can see the single issue, trade paperback, deluxe edition, and absolute edition, and you may note how the colors are subtly distinct in each version. We can see it in the white of the gutters around the panels and with the interior colors on pages like this and this. There are a number of factors that are potentially responsible for this variance, from the age of the volume to the paper and inks used. However, there are also 2 unique color schemes at play across these 4 versions. 2 are colored in the original 1986-87 colors, while 2 feature the enhanced, corrected, or updated colors from the 2005 Absolute Edition. These corrected colors have since become the new standard for all color versions of Watchmen moving forward. Now, whenever a classic is altered or modified, some may take issue with why this is occurring. They might legitimately feel like the powers that be are tinkering with something sacred. This feeling is only increased when the changed version is trumpeted as the new definitive version, and the fan base is informed that the classic or original version will no longer be available. One of the most infamous examples of this is the original Star Wars trilogy. It's pretty tricky to find a copy that doesn't have the digital special edition enhancements. When it comes to comics, I'm a Batman guy, so I remember a similar outcry when it came to the recoloring of classic stories like Year One and The Killing Joke. In both those cases, at least DC responded to the outcry by eventually making reprints available of the original versions in the Absolute editions. I don't believe this is yet the case with those Neil Adams recolored abominations, but maybe someday. So is the recoloring of Watchmen worthy of fan outcry? I personally don't think so. While we tend to see these types of alterations as corporate cash grabs, and they definitely are, at least the companies involved typically bring in the original creators to oversee or execute the changes. This gives the endeavor some credibility, but when the technological limits or time crunch deadlines resulted in a dip in quality, it only makes sense to bring back the original creators when preparing a new edition to sell. I know it can sometimes feel like an act of cultural vandalism, and those of us that are particularly nostalgic want our sacred texts to feel just like they did the first time we encountered them. But in the case of the recolored Watchmen, I think they did it right. And I'd like to take a detailed look at issue number 6 to show you what I mean. I'm going to be using my copy of issue 6 of Watchmen for most of the original colors, and the Absolute for most of the redone colors, because I won't have to fight them to stay open, and because they both feature a matte finish, so they should photograph better than the trade paperback or deluxe edition. But let's start with a quick page 1 comparison of the single issue and the trade. The single issue is darker than the trade paperback, but they feature the same color scheme throughout. It's safe to assume that the color will just trend to a less vibrant version of these for all the relevant trade paperback pages. Original Watchmen colorist John Higgins was brought back to supervise and direct the digital recoloring for the Absolute edition. On page 1, he's updated color with more complexity or variety, in that a yellow wall becomes mustard, and a purple suit becomes mauve, and the bruise moves from two-tone to a more complex gradient. Page 2 sees a color error in Rorschach's hair in panel 6 get corrected in the Absolute edition. There aren't a lot of significant changes on pages 3 and 4. However, the final panel of page 5 does have a notable change. Rorschach now has more realistic highlights on him, as opposed to the off yellow that was used in the original coloring. The color separation is also tighter in the Absolute edition, as you can see around Rorschach's hair here. The 6th page features the same style of changes we've seen earlier, with the pinks being toned down here. They've also corrected a little missed hit of color in young Walter's hair. Similar corrections are evident on page 7, where they've punched in a little white inside Rorschach's victim's mouth. And on page 8, the color around Gloria Long's mouth has been touched up in the Absolute edition. Page 9 features some changes that improve the fluidity of this shot-reverse shot convo between Walter and Dr. Malcolm. The green behind Rorschach in panels 3 and 6 in the original become more gray, and the darkness of the background in panel 5 has been reduced to improve consistency. In the final panel, they've also added color to Walter's eyes. On page 10, panel 4, they've punched in some missing color from Rorschach's tongue in the Absolute Edition. Here, panels 6 and 9 have been cleared up for missing color, while the background color for panels 7 and 8 have been changed from green to brown, so it matches earlier choices. On the 12th page, panel 2, they've colored Rorschach's bandages. In panel 3, they've corrected the color of the attacker's hand, which was mistakenly yellow in the original, fading into the background, but it's more distinct and proper here. And in panel 5, the prison guard's green uniform is now colored a more appropriate dark blue. In this panel from page 13, they fixed the color in the whites of Malcolm's eyes. In the Absolute Edition, they do a wonderful job of showing the passage of time through the easing up of Rorschach's bruise. In these 3 panels down the side of page 15, we see great examples of this more sophisticated treatment of the bruise coloring. Take note of what they've done with the color gradient on the smoke effect from the fire the comedian lit. In the updated version, it clearly moves from yellow to orange to red. We'll see that this color progression has important symbolic implications later on. Page 16 doesn't feature any new changes beyond what we've seen elsewhere, but page 17 features many changes, some significant and some more subtle. In panel 1, Dr. Malcolm Long's copy of Rorschach's file is yellow to improve consistency moving into the next panel. In panel 4, the background has been changed from pale orange behind Mel to pale green, so it now matches panel 1 and 3. The next one's a big deal. In panel 6, they've added the missing yellow element to the dog's brain. Now it fully parallels page 1, panel 7, as it should have. In addition to subtly paralleling the ink blot, this image also needs to be an exact duplicate of the previous version. It also needs to contain that movement from yellow to orange to red, which we'll see culminate soon. In panel 8, the orange background also gets moved to green to improve consistency, and they toned down the garish pinks in panel 9. The ink blot in panels 2 and 3 is given a yellow tinge rather than blue. This improves the transition into the next 2 images as Walter begins the flashback, which crystallizes his perspective as Rorschach. In panel 6, they've removed the yellow sunlight on the dogs to improve the clarity of the image, and in panel 9, they've smoothed out the spotty blacks. On page 19, the color separation has been tightened up in a few spots, and some of the lighting has been adjusted. The gross touch of red is removed from the bone that the 2 dogs fight over on panel 8 on this page. Again, we see that progression from yellow to red here, but it really takes center stage on the next page. Page 21 features one of the big moments in this particular issue of Watchmen. The cards on panels 6, 8, and 9 have been thoughtfully recolored here. Originally, the cards went from lighter blue to darker blue, but in the absolute recoloring, they go from yellow to orange to intense red, and this helps add extra emphasis to the key event that shapes the perspective of this character. This page is great for illustrating the less garish color scheme used in the Absolute Edition. The green background buildings along the top 3 panels have been changed to a subtle purple, while the browns and pinks have been toned down in the lower 6 panels. Unlike previous pages, which tended to have more or different color applications, page 23 actually features a less color. They've removed some of the color in panel 1 and panel 5 to increase the terror of the scene. They've also taken the whites out of this figure's eyes to remove the human quality from this scumbag. In the updated coloring, they've popped the reds throughout this page to bring emphasis to the blood and horror of the scene. On page 25, the red has also been popped, and the blue background of panel 9 has been switched to a more subdued brown. Here, with the updated colors, they've emphasized and distinctly separated the yellow, orange, and red in the first 3 panels. This serves to echo the changing color of the ink blot cards back on page 21 and fits the whole issue thematically. It isn't a big symbolic change, more of an aesthetic one, but here the flower bouquet in panels 8 and 9 has been cleaned up. It now features 8 colors instead of 4, and is just a nice example of a good upgrade. On the final 28th page of this issue, we come to the close of Malcolm Long's story. Here the pure blacks have been evened out, and this is especially evident in the 7th panel. As we've seen in this detailed look at issue 6 of Watchmen, the changes from the original to the updated coloring range from simple adjustments and corrections to more bold and symbolic shifts. Mr. John Higgins and the folks at Wildstorm FX did some judicious work here. While some fans might still prefer the garish, almost neon colors of the original that lend a more psychedelic tone to some scenes, I myself don't object to the slightly more muted tones. I believe that they preserved and improved a whole lot more than they altered and spoiled here. In my opinion, there was a high degree of respect for the original version evident in this color update, and I appreciated the precise separation and the thoughtful adjustments, especially when rereading the comic in an oversized format. In this case, they didn't vandalize Watchmen, they upgraded it, and as you can tell from the name of this channel, I love when I can upgrade my books.